And welcome everybody from our 2 week little mini hiatus. This is episode one. What episode is it? 193, I think. I actually pulled it up and then I forgot. Yeah, 193. And tonight we're going to do things a little differently since it's just Sam and I. Morgan regretfully can't be with us tonight due to family thingies. She had a death in the family and is traveling, so she won't be with us tonight. So we won't have the legal mind so adept at translating court cases and stuff. But I don't think we're too heavy on court cases today, so it might not be as bad.
I think we're all right today.
Yeah, and with us also from the frozen tundra of Canada, although it's not frozen anymore because we're
Finally in spring.
yeah,
Finally. Just finally.
yeah, finally. I've had my windows open for about a week. I actually had my AC on the other day. It got a little bit humid, so it wasn't so much the heat, but the humidity. But so tonight we're gonna attempt to tackle kind of a hot button issue with the recent Alabama court ruling concerning abortion, but we're not specifically going to talk about that case, but just an overall feeling. And my thinking behind it was that we here at Beyond the Trailer Park kind of have I won't say unique because I'm pretty sure somewhere out there are other podcasts that have a similar setup that we do. I'm a lesbian. Sam, obviously, is a trans woman, and Morgan, who is uh, just beginning her career, and a pregnancy could be devastating to her and Jonathan's plans for the future. So I thought we kind of offered a bit of a unique perspective that just, banter around what's going on. So that's where we're kind of sort of headed. Sorry, I have an itch. So we'll get into that in a minute, but first, as some of you may well know, Deb's interment was Sunday or Saturday, honey?
That would be Saturday.
It was Saturday. And so Sammy was going to share a few things concerning the interment in general, how it went, yada, yada, yada. And then um, Greg Siska at the interment read a piece from, I think it's, what's his face's here we go. You want a physicist to speak at your funeral. Sorry, I'm a little scatterbrained today.
No,
So,
it's okay, sweet thing. We all are.
so go ahead, Sammy. Take it away. Tell us the sad but good news. I guess I don't know how to phrase it.
not too much. Kind of. Let's call it closure. Let's call it closure.
Yes, closure.
Because I've had a lot of fans come to me and ask me just things here and there of what was to become and what were her wishes and things of that nature there. So I wanted to make sure that I kind of, for those who couldn't be there in person, that they could be given that closure, because that's important. I think that, you all wanted to be there. You all loved her like I did. All right. And so wanted to have a chance to provide that for everyone. So as of right now, as per our beloved co-host wishes there, her ashes, as she wished to not be wasteful with her life at any point, are gracefully dispersed with the rest of her family grave in Brussels, Ontario, as were her wishes. We rang a bell 108 times for her, as is Arno's tradition that we respect when someone is mourning.
Excellent.
And truly, that's all I had to share on it there. Just short and sweet. It's very proper. What she would have wanted. So I know there were some folks who were asking me about that, and hopefully that has given you the closure you need there.
Yeah. Well, I know a couple of comments that I have seen is why the delay from the funeral to the burial, and being that I live in the frozen tundra, generally your smaller funeral homes, or if are unable to inter whether ashes or body, because the ground's too frozen to dig in, so they have to wait until after the first thaw.
Precisely, yeah. So that's very common
Yeah.
in Canada. You're going to see that a lot.
I know when my girlfriend was killed back in '88, we had to wait from like freaking December till May.
Oh, geez. Wow.
And it was like, yeah. And it was frustrating because you don't get that final sense of closure. Um, I mean, speaking personally and not to drag it out, I don't think I ever will, but
Hmm.
it's just, it's weird because every now and then I'll have memories pop up and I'll be like, fuck. I'll be like, yeah. I mean, I just have a really weird sense about everything that's transpired, but that's my issue. It's not an issue, obviously, that everybody goes through. Maybe they do. I don't know. But yeah, it's nice to know that her final wishes were taken care of. Not that I had any doubt that Arnold would not, because I know, they were pretty tight. So, but yeah. But one of the things Greg Siska had posted uh, a piece called "You Want a Physicist to Speak at Your Funeral," and it was a comment from an well, it said the following written by NPR commenter Aaron Freeman, and it was published on the Thank God for Evolution website. And I can't remember offhand whose website that is. It's a name person, but I can't think who it is off the top of my head. So I thought I'd read that real quick, or, well, I should say attempt to read it, because we know the last time I tried to read something dealing with this, I like fucking melted down. So it goes, you want a physicist to speak at your funeral. You want the physicist to talk to your grieving family about the conservation of energy so they will understand that your energy has not died. You want the physicist to remind your sobbing mother about the first law of thermodynamics, that no energy gets created in the universe and none is destroyed. You want your mother to know that all your energy, every vibration, every BTU of heat, every wave of every particle that was her beloved child remains with her in this world. You want the physicist to tell your weeping father that amid energies of the cosmos, you gave as good as you got. And boy, oh boy, did Doug do that. At one point, you'd hope that the physicist would step down from the pulpit and walk to your broken-hearted spouse there in the pew and tell him or her that all the photons that ever bounced off your face, all the particles whose paths were interrupted by your smile, by the touch of your hair, hundreds of trillions of particles have raced off like children, their ways forever changed by you. And as your widow rocks in the arms of a loving family, may the physicist let him or her know that all the photons that bounced from you were gathered in the particle detectors that are his or her eyes, that those photons created within him or her constellations of electromagnetically charged neurons whose energy will go on forever. And the physicist will remind the congregation of how much all of our energy is given off as heat. There may be a few fanning themselves with their programs as he says it, and he will tell them that the warmth that flowed through you in life is still here, still part of all that we are, even as we who mourn continue the heat of our own lives. And you'll want the physicists to explain to those who loved you that need not have faith. Indeed, they should not have faith. Let them know that can measure the scientists the scientists have measured precisely the conservation of energy and found it accurate, verifiable, and consistent across space and time. You can hope your family will examine the evidence and satisfy themselves that the science is sound and that they will be comforted to know that your energy is still around. According to the law of conservation of energy, not a bit of you is gone. You're just less orderly. And I thought that last line was kind of funny because it was like, yep, you're not gone, you're just scatterbrained. So, but yeah, that's what Greg read at the service. So I thought that was very apt. So great choice, Greg, and thank you. So, but with that, rest in peace, my friend.
Very much so. Very much so.
Yeah. So as I said, Morgan couldn't be with us, and so we have Sam, and people are probably well, not people that we know that listen to the show are probably wondering what the hell would Sam have to say concerning the abortion issue, and it's actually as I was telling Sammy before we went live, is that what a lot of people don't realize is that the abortion issue in general, not these specific laws, but in general, are not just about abortion. And so, yeah, I think Sammy would have a lot to say. So, and we'll get to that point. And with the setup that we have here at Beyond the Trailer Park, I mean, I'm past my prime. I have never had at any point in my life an interest in having or raising children. Um, I did for a while when my finances were like 50-fold better than what they are now. Contemplated adopting a child just because a child needed a home, etc. You know, or fostering. Actually, I was looking into, but that never transpired. But as far as raising children or having children, going through the whole pregnancy process and all that stuff, I just never found that to be something that warranted my attention. Doesn't mean that I ignored it. It's just it never interests me. I know some women who, uh, pardon the religious overtones here, who felt it was a blessing, and some literally felt it was a blessing from God. Me, on the other hand, I am the exact opposite. I struggle mightily when dealing with children. But then we have Sam, who is a transgender woman, who biologically, as science stands, and we will touch on this because Sam actually mentioned something I was not aware of, um, can't have children in the traditional way. In other words, as a woman, because biologically, physiologically, she is not built for that. But from what I understand, science has come a long way and there might be possibilities. And then, of course, Morgan, our third member, I mean, she is of childbearing age, but she's also just beginning her career, and so is her significant other. So, an unplanned pregnancy, as I said to Sam, we'll call it an accidental pregnancy, not one through violence, could derail not only her life plans, but the life plans of her partner. So, yeah, I think we all do have a say in how these pieces of legislation as a whole go through. Um, from the outset, and I can't speak for Sam, I'll let her put her 2 cents in it. I am pro choice. That does not mean I support abortion. I support the idea or the notion that a woman and her doctor and any applicable people in her life have a say as to whether she continues a pregnancy or not. Plain and simple, as I've stated in our episode we did with Kathy Dawson, it's none of my fucking business. And I will support you in whatever decision you make. Now, there are 375,000 children in U.S. foster care alone. Okay? Give or take. Of those 375,000, approximately 114,000 cannot be returned to their families and are waiting to be adopted. Okay, more than 60% of those 100,000 plus children in foster care spend 2 to 5 years in the system before being adopted. Some never get adopted. Almost 20% of those 100,000 plus spend 5 or more years in foster care. And as I said, again, some never get adopted. So until those numbers equalize where there's no children waiting to be adopted or no child hoping to be adopted, I will be a pro choice advocate. Unless you forgot, I am a product of that system. Granted, I was adopted primarily at birth, about 3 months once the final paperwork went through. So this is an issue that's always been kind of close to the heart, so to speak. But to look at it another way, about 7 million people, 7 million individuals within our population, about 2%, have adopted. Kudos to them, you know, but add to that 6 in 10 Americans, and these are only American statistics. Sorry, Sam. Um, I didn't get a chance to look at the worldwide or, in this case, Canadian statistics, but 6 in 10 people have personal experience with adoption. Okay. Whether they themselves are adopted like I am, whether it's a family member or a close friend, um, they've adopted a child or they've had to place a child for adoption. You know, from stories, and I will say these are definitely stories because I've gotten conflicting ones. In my family, my biological mother was 15 when she allegedly conceived me. So she was like 16 and 3 months or something when she physically birthed me. So my bio mom back in 1964, when adoption was, uh, or when abortion and adoption really were unheard of. Whether I was a lucky one, we'll let fate decide that. To me, whether I was, I've heard people use the line, well, be thankful that your parents adopted you. It's like, I don't even know how to answer that question because there is a part of me that is very sarcastic and just like totally grumpy and be like, yeah, no. So it can go either way. It's a tough topic to talk about. In general, though, I support pro-choice. I support the fact that it's not my decision to make. It's not anybody else's decision to make other than the woman who is having, who is pregnant, her doctor, and if applicable, her significant other and pertinent family members. That's it. It's none of my business. It's none of Sammy's business. It's none of any of our listeners' business. So I don't want this to be a Christian bashing session per se. I mean, but it's important to understand that a lot of these draconian laws that we're seeing being drafted are based within a Christian belief, religious belief. We're going to deal primarily with what Christianity has to say because while Islam is growing in the US, Islam is not the predominant religion in this country as far as making up these draconian laws. We're not going to deal with what Hindu says or what Taoists say or Shinto or any of the other world religions. We're primarily interested in the influence of the Christian belief on the overall topic. So, Sammy, what's your 2 cents before we delve into this?
I love how I'm the appetizer before the. I love that though. That's nice. That's nice. Well, the funny thing is that you look at any time in any, especially white, westernized run cultures, where somebody's body's being policed. For starters, it's 99.9% of the time not the men. The men's bodies are never being policed. It's never, let's give them all a vasectomy, and if they want to have children later, they can.
Right.
It's all the OS is put on the woman to be the responsible person, because obviously women are sluts, so we have to be. We're dangerous. We have to be.
Right.
So there's that underlying factor, and then it doesn't matter what particular flavor of the month the powerful rich white men are trying to police this week. It's either, oh hey, let's hate Muslim women, let's hate black women, let's hate black men, let's hate trans women, let's hate lesbian, anything that's below us, let's police them. So what are we going to hate this week? Abortion. That's what we're going to. Okay, so any woman for any reason, we're going to just hate on that, because we need to police and control anything that's less than us. And
Right.
it happens all the time. This isn't just like some new crazy law coming out. Like this is commonplace in white white Western culture. Very common,
Yeah.
like ridiculously so.
Well,
So
I think that was a point you brought up before we went live, is that, and it's something that we'll touch on a bit, is that it's not just the abortion issue. It's the policing of, in this case, my personal opinion, and you agree with me, is that it's policing of women. And,
yes, yes.
and or let's broaden even more, because I don't think this just encompasses abortion, but it encompasses the transgender issues, LGBT issues. It it's policing others that don't specifically believe the same way they do. And one of the things, I mean, I kind of have toyed around. I mean, my primary interest when it comes to religious belief, obviously, is dealing with homosexuality and how it's treated in the Bible, or as I believe, not in the Bible. Um, so over the years, I've collected um, numerous verses, and as I said, I don't want this to be, oh, we're bashing on Christianity segment, but when I mean, when you have a religious belief that is invoked in the drafting of these laws, it's really hard not to. I mean, Kay Ivey of Alabama has said such. This is a quote from her. This was put out in uh, a statement put out by her government website. This legislation stands as a powerful testament to Alabamians deeply held religious or deeply held belief that every life is precious and that every life is a sacred gift from God. This has
Wah, wah.
yeah, and all of them have very similar, you know, uh, rhetoric surrounding it. So this is not, science. Well, it is, but it's not science saying, "Oh, abortion is bad," because science doesn't say that. You know, um, like it's purely religious. It's purely us versus them. It goes back to, and this is a point we're going to hit on in a few minutes, is that this is something I wrote about 5 fucking years ago with the whole Hobby Lobby issue, how that was a test case, and we will come back to that. This is not something new. And one of the things I discovered in my travels through the issue over the years is that, people have to remember, um, I said that wrong. Like anything based in religion, like Kay Ivey's statement. religious dogma and tenets and what the Bible states can be construed to support pretty much any hot button social issue. My best example was I was doing some research years ago on the idea of divination and how it's in the Bible. There's like 243 verses that say divination is good, but there's 240 verses that say it's bad. Well, guess what? That applies to abortion as well.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing we have to keep in mind when we want to argue from that standpoint, which is not a standpoint I will argue from generally, because I'm sorry, the science tells me completely otherwise. But let's say we're coming at it from a biblical standpoint, we're arguing, discussing with a theist. Here's a few points you got to keep in mind. And you kind of touched on it. Abortion was well known and widely practiced in ancient times, both Old Testament times and New Testament times. Abortion is not new.
Mm-hmm.
Abortion has been around since man.
Safe abortion is new.
Yeah, safe abortion is a kind of a new phenomena. I remember pre-Roe v. Wade. Granted, I was pretty young, but I remember reading in the Buffalo News where I grew up, and I remember reading an article in the news. I probably was about 9 or 10. Yeah, I read newspapers even back then. Where a woman died from having literally what we would call a back alley abortion. Yes, they used a coat hanger. That is not just a fanciful meme floating around the internet. That really happened. Okay? So abortion is not a new thing. Safe abortions, okay, yeah. We want to go that way. Both the Old and New Testament are very outspoken on pretty much every aspect or minutiae of daily life. If you've ever read the Bible cover to cover, which I have done numerous times, and I know many of our listeners probably have as well, um, every minute aspect of daily life, is covered. Especially if you look at the laws of Moses, and then Jesus in the New Testament clarified many of these laws to remove ambiguity or
Mm-hmm.
to add motive and intent to the quote spirit of the law. That whole jot and tittle verse. Okay, and a third point to keep in mind is, or in my opinion, is if the commandments against murder were intended to apply to a fetus, then the laws of Moses and the later prophets and judges would have said so. Okay, and this gets into the whole notion of a omnipotent, all-knowing God. If he would know. Now, the caveat I will throw with that is how different sects of Christianity define the whole notion of omnipotence and all-knowing and all that stuff. But that that's a side rail, and we could be down that rabbit hole for hours. But basically, the Bible does not encourage, support, or promote abortion. And it's really neither pro abortion nor an abortion. The Bible is neutral on the subject. It doesn't say anything for it, doesn't say anything against it. At least not in a definitive sense that thou shalt not abort your baby. Okay? Things that they are adamant about, thou shalt not kill. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's there. So you can't argue from a biblical perspective, in my opinion, because it's open to interpretation. And this is where some of these verses and I'm not going to mention all of them. I have like, I don't know, 12, 14 that I plucked out some of my notes from other shows. But like,
Of course you do.
yeah, I have like, I don't know how many actually I have because I have so many different articles I have saved that talk about this. But the biggie is always Genesis 2:7. He breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and it was then that man became a living being. Okay, that, I mean, for me, really is when life begins, when you take your first breath. And I've always held that position. And it's funny to find that those that come from my side, pro-choice, you know, use that verse to support it. But there are others that take it in the opposite direction. But the way it's always been explained to me is that, man received his life from the breath of God. That's literally from sources I've read and, through the course of the years, is that that's why they spank the baby's ass when it's born. They get it to breathe.
Just nothing to do with that.
Yeah. But it's based in a biblical notion of when they take their first breath, they become life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, um, I have no idea why I have this in there, so I'm not going to go over that one because I started a thought because Ken Ham and Pat Robertson are arguing about uh, the primarily the bill in Alabama, and Pat Robertson, if you listen to it in wrong context, he's saying that the using this specific piece of legislation as the impetus to push the Supreme Court to make a ruling was a bad idea. Of course, Ken Ham and his ignorance is like, oh, Pat Robertson is for abortion. It's really, it's kind of a comical argument because you have two people that, claim Christianity, and I'm not doubting. They've both been around for God as long as I can remember, especially Pat Robertson, who I've actually heard speak. What a trip that was. But yeah, you got two people arguing over the same thing. But if you really listen to Robinson's statement, he's saying that the legislation is too soon to push the issue. In other words, it's not going to fit our agenda what we want ultimately. And of course, Ken Ham has twisted it. I mean, he's thrown out some really wacky statements in the last 2 weeks. It's kind of funny to watch because it's like, dude. But yeah, and then Job 33:4 states, the Spirit of God has made me, and the breath of the Almighty give me life.
Mm-hmm.
Ezekiel 37:5 and 6 says the Lord, and these are King James, so if I'm tripping over words, you know why, besides the fact that I can't speak. Uh, thus says the Lord to these bones, behold, I will cause breath to enter you, and you shall live. And I will lay sinews upon you, and you will cause flesh to come upon you, and cover you with skin, and put breath in you. Yada, yada, yada. Exodus 21:22 um, states that if a man causes a woman to have a miscarriage, he shall be fined. However, if the woman dies, then he will be put to death. So it should be apparent from this that the aborted fetus, if you want to call it that, is not considered a living human being, since the resulting punishment for abortion is nothing more than a fine. It's not really classified in the Bible as a capital offense, so to speak. Another one that's a favorite that I've picked around a bit, doing an exegesis on it. Jeremiah 1:5. Before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee. And before thou camest forth out of the womb, I sanctified thee. I have appointed thee a prophet unto nations. And a lot of people say, well, this speaks to the foreknowledge of God, that he knew you before you um, were born. But the problem is, at least in my opinion, is look at the wording. Before I formed you in the womb. It's
Mm-hmm.
talking about before birth.
That's
Before,
predestination. That's
yeah,
like Calvinism right there.
and a lot of these that I've read from uh, are actually Calvinist sources, and
I thought so.
Mormon, because they do get
Yeah,
into the whole notion of the predestination and stuff. You
they
know,
do.
And basically, like in this verse from Jeremiah specifically, what's really happening is if you read the book of Jeremiah, introducing his ministry. That's why it's in the first chapter. And basically, he's writing in the first chapter specifically about his own calling as a prophet. So prior to Roe v. Wade in 73, most Bible scholars interpreted this as a reference to God's foreknowledge of the future. It wasn't until after Roe v. Wade and not until more recently that this scripture ever entered into the abortion debate. And, that whole point, because most of my commentaries, my uh, Bible references are actually pre 1972. I have a few,
Oh, okay.
and the reason I have some that go back even before 1955. And the reason I do that is because prior to 1955, 1957 ish, uh, you would not see the word homosexual in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
You would not
Absolutely. Yeah.
you would not see it even referred to. It meant primarily effeminate. And
Mm-hmm.
there's a whole, yeah, you can spend hours on that. But the political climate changed the meaning of text within the Bible. And you could see it here too with the whole abortion issue, how verses are interpreted. So I like to go back before and see what the older biblical commentaries say, not what we have now, because um, if you know anything about biblical translations, when they translate into another language or they make a new translation, primarily the political agenda and the political leanings of the interpreters, of the translators, will be interjected into that text. If you
Mm-hmm.
if you read the beginning shit, the preface and introduction to like NIV or to RSV, etc., you're going to see they will actually state that. And you can track like a name that comes into my head right now is the Bible Society.
Mm-hmm.
They state this is the view we hold, and this is how we interpreted the scripture or translated the scripture. So yes, there is a political bias in the scriptures that you read, whether it's NIV, RSV, King James. I mean, King James even had it as well, if you know the history of the King James Bible. I mean, all the translations, every single one on the market has a political leaning. Some are very outright in their political leanings, like the one that Conservapedia was touting, the conservative translation. I can't think of the name of it. Last 5, 7 years or so, it came out.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. I'm trying
I
to.
Their whole point was, yeah, we're taking out the neutral language, basically taking out neutral language and interjecting what we think it should be, not what the text says it should be. So yeah, you have to, and that's why I have 70 copies of the Bible, because I'm aware that there is bias in how things are translated. Usually when I debate, I stick to the King James because I do basically debate people that are King James only. They will not accept any other version of the Bible. And generally, if I'm doing something like the show, if I remember, I will look it up in NIV just because it's easier to read. I don't know if you remember when Deb was doing Chronify Me, or not Chronify Me, her show on the Quran. Basically, the guy was writing in Elizabethan English. It was as bad as reading, and she was trying to read it out loud, as bad as reading the King James version of the Quran. It's
Oh
what
my God.
she would compare it to. So yeah, there's all types. There's the paraphrases. So yeah, how you approach the scripture, how you look at it, you have to know, who translated it, what was their what was their bias, and that's why, by picking and choosing various biblical sources, I hope I'm not perfect at it. I hope I eliminate that bias. It's like, okay, well, This one says this, and these five says this. I'm going with the five. So yeah, but and this happens all throughout. Like in Psalm 127:3, lo, children are a heritage of Jehovah, and the fruit
Hmm.
of the womb is his reward. So basically, what it's saying is, children are a gift. And that's why I mentioned that earlier. Well, what's the nature of a gift?
Optional.
Yeah, gift,
Can
gift,
be given back.
yeah, a gift is freely given.
Hmm.
And the recipient has the option or choice to accept or reject that gift. But a majority of Christians look at it, well, children are a gift from God, ignoring the whole notion of what a gift is.
Yeah. I
But
gave you life. That was a gift. I gave you life. Like,
yes,
oh,
and you hear,
oh.
in fact, I probably heard that a few times. Well, no, I did.
No,
Well,
I heard that from my parents. Absolutely, I did.
well,
Absolutely.
I did too, although now that I think of it, my mom and dad really shouldn't have used that because they didn't give birth to me, but the sentiment,
Irony.
yeah, the sentiment was there, but it's basically, well, okay, if my life was a gift, then I I'm giving it back, you know. And then we'll just hit one more, just because, as I said, I have a shitload of these verses that have been used in various discussions. Isaiah 49:15. Can a woman forget her sucking child, that she should not have compassion on the son of her womb? Yea, they may forget, yet will I not forget thee. I hate reading King James. You know, some people are saying that's for abortion, but it's like the scripture isn't even talking about fetal life. Okay, it's referring to the relationship of God to his children, or children of Israel, which, by the way, we are not children of Israel. As well, I say we, but Christians are not technically children of Israel. Again, another point we could argue for hours.
Don't tell them that.
Yeah.
Shh.
Well, and that goes to the heart of we could spend hours on it, and why I say that is that's the heart of my argument against homosexuality being in the Bible, because all your prescriptions before and after the Levitical passages are specifically, including the Levitical passages, are to the children of Israel, which we are not. If you were Christian, you are not a child of Israel. You are not Jewish. Although, if you're following Christ, technically you are, because Christ never renounced his Judaism. So, as I said, we could go down rabbit holes on that one. But, basically what's going on in Isaiah is it's using, that metaphor, that child of Israel metaphor of being born children already sucking, feeding. The reference to the womb is where he came from, not where he is or who he is now. So use of the scripture is relevant in relevance to abortion is very far from the actual context. So it doesn't even really apply. But people try to force it. But as you can see, I mean, you can't really argue, in my opinion, from a biblical perspective, because really the Bible is neutral. It has just as many verses that can be interpreted as being for abortion, and just as many verses that can be interpreted against abortion. Just like divination and any other hot butt social issue you want to throw in there. So it's crazy. And this is the thing. I mean, I don't know how you felt, Sammy, when specifically when this thing came out in Alabama. I mean, like my first thought was, I'm not going to touch this. And then as the week went on and Kay Ivey signed it, yada yada yada, I was like, holy fuck. I mean, seriously. I mean, what were your thoughts around? I mean, this one specific bill when it came out.
Well, I have a lot of friends that are in the States. I'm up in the frozen tundra myself. But again, I do have a lot of friends that are in the States that it could very well affect firsthand. and it's fucking scary hearing them post about, wow, I was basically trying to build a life and I had barely any of a chance in this podunk state already.
Yeah. Well, I think that's one of the things that struck me too, because I do have a lot of friends that are, younger than I am, and
Mm-hmm.
are in childbearing years. I am long past that stage.
Oh, hush.
Well, I don't mean that as a thing on age. It's just that I've been in menopause for 10 fucking years, so I really don't.
Pausing for men does not mean that you're unable to have a child, okay? I
Well,
paused for men too. Like,
yeah, but your pause is different. But yeah, and I see some of these, some of the younger people posting like, "Oh my god, if I get pregnant now, it's going to destroy my career."
mm-hmm.
Or, and it's like, I think about Morgan. I mean, she just literally graduated from law school. Her and Jonathan are just literally, now that they're both out of school, starting their life together. An unplanned pregnancy could totally derail that. And
Mm-hmm.
I find that like really, really disturbing because here you have, two people, two individuals that I think personally uh, could really contribute to our society, and not just on LGBT issues, not just on atheist issues, but on issues in general. Because Morgan's interest is in I think I get this right, water rights. So it's not an LGBT; it's a societal issue.
Human issue, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and she has interest in a lot of ecological issues that are being pandered about, like the whole climate change thing. So she's not just a one issue person. She's very well rounded, and
Right.
I look at Amanda Scott, who some of our listeners might be familiar with through Facebook. I've been following Amanda since she wrote that letter. God, 4 years ago now. It's been a while.
It has, yeah. It wasn't recent. It's been a couple years now.
And she went from, and I'm not saying this to embarrass her. I find, and I am totally told her in a post that she should not be ashamed that she got a GED. She fucking finished high school. Okay, that's what you should be proud of. Not, and then she went to community college. Then she went on to Georgetown, and she's very active in civil rights issues. She's another one, an unplanned pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
Her and her partner, she is with somebody, could derail both their, and they're both very, well-rounded people that it could derail them. Then you have the issues of
Oh, goddamn. You know what, Deb? My cat's being an ass. Just one sec, sweet thing. The nature of having cats in your life. One sec.
you got Vlad. But yeah, I mean, an unplanned pregnancy, whether by violence or just oops, it could really devastate a lot of people's plans and put the life in jeopardy. So while Sammy's fixing the cat problem, um, can you still hear me, Sam? Sam, Sam. Oh dear. As I said, I'll jump ahead to this, but this whole thing with the abortion issue and the ramifications of such is that back in 2014, when I wrote about primarily the Hobby Lobby case. Oh, you're back.
Ah, Hobby Lobby. Good timing.
Okay, well, I'll come back to that because that'll take me out of order and really, really totally confuse me. Because like, if I don't follow my notes when I script about it, I get all lost. But I think the biggest thing is that, and I touched upon in the beginning, is that these legislations, and not just the abortion legislation, but we've seen a lot of anti-trans, anti-LGBT legislation, is not remotely based on science. It's all pure emotion.
mm-hmm.
And like the biggest thing I'm aware of is that there are legitimate anti-abortion campaigns that conflate contraception with abortion. That was the whole thing behind the Hobby Lobby case.
Hmm.
And basically, contraception prevents a pregnancy, and abortion ends a pregnancy. But it's like, and this is as one who does some science communication. You know, I see it in the anti-vax community. I see it dealing with some of the woo I deal with. Yes, Jillian. They just totally ignore all the science behind it. And one of the things, with the Hobby Lobby ruling is that it conflated abortion with contraception, and people don't know what contraception is. I mean, basically, simply put, it prevents pregnancy by interfering with ovulation, fertilization, or implantation. Abortion, as I said, ends an established pregnancy after implementation. That is the scientific definition of pregnancy. You know, and people forget that, you know, most fertilized eggs don't implant.
Hmm.
They are, quote, aborted or miscarried. So I find it, I mean, and this is something we touched on with Kathy too when we had Kathy Dawson on, is that this intentional conflation is appealing to an emotional level. And I find that very hard. It's like, I mean, how many times can you say, no, that's not a pregnancy? But, and first it was, now they're saying, well, life begins at conception, and they move the goalposts. And that's why we're where we're at now. I mean, if you remember, we talked about the heartbeat bills, which now state that anything after 6 weeks, you cannot abort it. Well, the problem is, define what a heartbeat is, because what you're seeing in a 6 week old fetus is basically electrical impulses. The heart
Hmm.
isn't even formed yet.
Exactly right.
So, you know, I, this whole, I mean, the whole impetus, I mean, besides is Sammy, with controlling women, is they're trying to flip Roe v. Wade. And
Hmm.
that's why we're seeing such a glut of these bills, because they're hoping that one of these bills will stick, will be challenged in court, all the way up to the Supreme Court, forcing the Supreme Court, which now has a conservative bent, to uh, dismantle Roe v. Wade. Now, what a lot of people don't understand, and I actually just learned this the other day, and I wish Morgan was here to correct anything I say that might be faulty. While it removes Roe v. Wade from a federal level, it then pushes everything back to the state. In other words, each state would have its own laws. It's kind of like what we saw in the Overfell's ruling. Some states um, accepted gay marriage, some did not. But your marriage outside of your own state might not be recognized by XYZ state. And I think that's the same scenario they're pushing for, with, nullifying the Roe v. Wade hearing, is that each state will then have its own set of laws dealing with abortion, whether it's legal or not, when you can have it, when you can't have it, yada, yada, yada. But 6 weeks, from a scientific standpoint, and from what I understand, is that most women don't know they're even pregnant at 6 weeks.
Hmm.
So, basically, one meme I saw was like, get a supply. What they suggested was get a supply of early pregnancy tests, and if you have sex, test your urine every day until you know you're not pregnant, but don't tell anybody. Because the second you tell somebody, if you're in a state that doesn't allow abortion, you're
Then you're a
screwed.
murderer.
Yes, exactly. And this was specifically in reference to the Alabama law.
Hmm.
There's, it's like, so a woman gets pregnant, which, from my understanding, normal circumstances, it should be the happiest moment of your life. Well, here you get to not tell anybody that you're pregnant for the simple reason that, you know, and they're actually telling women that live in a state like Alabama that passed this law that they should have their medical care outside of the state. In other words, a state that allows abortion.
Hmm.
Yeah, and it's like these laws are just like the they're draconian. And it's like you said, why not? Okay, if you're so against abortion, why not have men get vasectomies?
It's reversible. It's
Yeah,
less intrusive than any abortive method done on anyone who has a uterus whatsoever. I'm not going to make this exclusive about women. Anyone with childbearing abilities who goes for an abortion is getting way more of an intrusive operation than somebody going for a vasectomy, which can be reversed, is safer. Oh gosh, and you can have condomless sex if you and your partner are fluid bonded. Oh, like the benefits, guys. And you act like it's a bad thing. Like the
well,
benefits, fuck. Like
I don't know if you saw this. There was a, I don't know if it was a meme. It might have been an article that one of the legislators, specifically in Alabama, actually put a bill, you know, presented a bill where I can't remember how it was worded, but basically it was that if the man has to get a vasectomy, and then if they want to have children, they have to have it reversed so they can have children. It was really bizarre. It was basically trying to take what I think it was a satire bill, basically. Um, but basically, what she was trying to say is, like you said, why put all the onus on the woman?
mhm.
You know, and that's the thing. Like one of the arguments I hear is, well, it should be a man's decision of whether a woman has an abortion or not, or the partner's decision, I should say. Well, okay, that's fine and dandy until the child is born and the significant other disappears
Mhm.
and there's no child support. So I know another satire bill that was placed, I think it was in Georgia. I don't remember. But basically was from the moment your pregnancy is confirmed, child support payment starts then. And they're like, and the guys responding to this thread were like, "You can't do this." Like, well, you can't tell me what I can do with my body then. If you're not going to support this child, and I'm not talking about cases of rape here, I'm talking about consensual
Oh,
sex.
absolutely, absolutely.
Rape is a whole different
Yeah.
ball game because I'm sorry, although in some of the comments surround Republican comments surrounding that a child of rape is a god, gift from God is fucking bullshit, and we're not even gonna go there because I probably lose my shit. But yeah, I'm talking consensual sex, or that results in a child. I know, I'll say at least three. There's more kids, okay, that under the age of 21 who, without the support of their family, never would have graduated from high school because where are the daddies?
Mhm.
So it's such a hot button issue, and my cigarette will not stay lit, and I just broke it.
Oh, sweet thing.
But yeah, I think, I mean, we can get into the issue, more complex issue of bodily autonomy. I mean, that's a rabbit hole, and we talked a little bit about it with Kathy Dawson, and I do recommend, uh, if you guys are interested, give that a listen. There's been so much stuff published concerning, specifically the Alabama bill, but all the other draconian laws concerning abortion. That I was like, holy shit! My newsfeed was just filled with it, and it's an important issue. I'm not saying that it isn't, but it's just like, wow. And I think, for somebody like you, Sam, and we talked about this before we went on air. I mean, what would you have to say about it? You know what I'm referring to, I hope. I mean, you're a trans woman. This doesn't affect you.
It does, though, because not only is it another example of something less than a man being policed and marginalized for their benefit in some way, shape, or form, or to lessen us, but very recently, trans women now can get pregnant. There are very much so scientific advances going on that if basically you've got the right doctor and you've got enough money and all of your health cards fit the right deck, and this is me simplifying the fuck out of it because I'm not medically smart that way. It is possible though, all right? Done enough reading. It is possible. It's just very rare and typically is not something pursued or mainstream yet. Doesn't mean it's not possible. So it is still something that affects us, and beyond that it's just going to be another excuse to, because it was never about, it's like it was never about the bathrooms, it was never about the drinking fountains. It's just another thing to take away from us. It's another way to bring this wave back, because we were doing so good for a bit. Like all presidents are evil, don't get me wrong, but we were doing so good for a bit, and then all of a sudden we just dropped horribly, and then the world followed suit. It's like, all right, America's going back to shit. Let's do it. So
Yeah.
like fucking like Brazil and like Japan and Korea and Canada now, like all these places are just going to shit because let's follow suit what they do there.
You just brought up Canada. I was like really, really shocked. I don't remember when. It was like in the last 2 weeks. But it's like, it's not just, not that I ever assumed it was, it's not just the States.
No.
You're having, something that's been settled for, God, what, 14 years now?
Mm-hmm.
As far as the issues surrounding LGBT stuff, is being resurrected, if that's even the right word. I mean, you're dealing with shit that you guys allegedly, based on what I know, you guys solved it, and now you got people dredging it up again and causing issues up in Canada. And I'm not speaking just of Ford, because I believe this is happening in Calgary.
Yeah, no, this one here in particular is nationwide, and it's very typical that either something in Alberta or something in Ontario will cause the rest of the country to follow suit. It's
Yeah,
very common. I see that in our voting, and very similar to American politics. Once the one side fucks up long enough, we're going to vote for the other side because obviously they're going to do a better job.
yeah,
And they're both evil. They're both shit.
yeah. Well,
And
I think another point you said too is like, okay, like you said, both sides have their good points and bad points, but recently, and primarily with the transgender issues, the bathroom bills, etc., etc. Basically, what President Trump has done, is rescinded every single, uh, I'll say, executive order
mhm.
or any legislation, anything that Obama did to advance the LGBT issue, specifically transgender. He has reversed every piece of.
It's almost like he goes out of his way to.
Yes, And it's like, and it kills me because I still have one or two friends, if I can even call them that anymore, who are LGBT community, um, that support President Trump. And I'm like, how the fuck do you do that?
They're being paid.
I'm like,
Gotta be it. That's gotta be it.
no, they're people. It's like, and they're not stupid people. Okay, they're not. I don't like using the word, but they're not rednecks. They're like me. They're obviously not as socially progressive as I thought. But it's like it's just like the log cabin Republicans. I could never understand them, especially in the 80s and 90s, because it's like, dude, you're voting against your own best interest. But okay, you know, I could see in fiscal areas, in financial areas where they could go that way. But it's like everything else, it's like no.
It's
But
because you're rich and benefiting, and you can look the
well,
other way, or you can pay enough to not be persecuted.
yeah.
If you're a
And
rich gay, it's okay.
well, I think that's something that Caitlyn Jenner is experiencing
Uh-huh.
and hopefully learning from, and not to pick on Caitlyn, but it's like she has the money to basically, for lack of a better word, protect herself. So she's not going to be affected like you or I or Morgan. Well, you wouldn't be, although you would be up in Canada from your policies. But, for me and Morgan or Tris or any of our other LGBT friends that are in the community would be affected by it. I mean, I've seen two that I'm not going to call out by name because we all know them. So I'm pretty sure y'all are aware of it, that are probably two of the strongest women I know. Okay, especially as far as their advocacy and their openness and willing to share their personal stories of what they have gone through. And if I'm reading what they post correctly, they're fucking terrified.
Uh-huh.
And the sad thing is, like, while it doesn't affect me personally, I have not had any fallout from any of these draconian laws, whether they're, you know, I get the occasional comments here and there, but it's not affecting my ability to work. It's not affecting my ability to live, anything like that. Whereas where I can compartmentalize it and separate it from my life, because it's not my identity that's being attacked, whereas these people are being attacked because of who they are.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if I'm saying this right, and I'm sorry if I'm making a mishmash of it, but basically, because they are transgendered, they are being attacked. And these people are terrified. And it's really disheartening to see because, you know, it's like if you can take two super strong women who fight for this stuff on a daily basis
Uh-huh.
and they're terrified, what does that make me? You know, what does it make, somebody that doesn't have the platform? You know,
Gotta say something, yeah.
it's like, and it's really, and I think one of the things that got me, like, especially in the last 2 weeks, because I've been thinking about stuff. You do that when you're in a depressive phase. And it's like, I don't even know what to do to help anymore. Other than just, hey, this is fucking bullshit. This has got to stop. But is that enough? And it's so frustrating. And I think, you know, part of the reason we took a hiatus is, you know, not only am I bipolar, I have an issue with post stroke depression.
Uh-huh.
And usually post stroke depression can last anywhere from 3 to 7 years after the incident. Well, so it's really hard to determine whether I'm in a bipolar drop or whether it's post stroke. I think it's a combination of.
Yeah, that's just it. Fuck.
It's like, okay, what am I? Do I need to go see a shrink or
But it's never fair that way because like that's what makes us human is that we're always fucking complicated that way. It's never just one thing. It's all of that and oh, when you were 5 and that one bully said that thing to you that's still resonating with you 60 years later or whatever or 50 years later, 40 years later, whoever. Like it's so many things like that just all at once. It's never
Yeah,
fair. It's never
yeah.
fair.
It's like, okay, so I always know when I'm in a depressive phase or coming out of one because like my apartment looks like a fucking cyclone hit it. And yes, my apartment looks like a fucking cyclone has hit it. Domestic diva, I am not when I'm depressed. So, but I can't determine whether it's post stroke, whether it's bipolar, and I know since my stroke, my bipolar has changed some. Which is, I know it sounds weird, but one of the biggest issues was when I was going through menopause, how it would affect my bipolar. I'm one of those that cannot use HRT or couldn't use HRT because I have no health history and I had already had um, my 2 heart attacks prior to that. So
Right, right.
going on HRT was not a really good option. But for me, luckily, I did not have some of the issues that I know other women have had. Like, I had a friend who went totally fucking bonko psycho. Actually, it was my ex. I mean, like, totally went off the rails. But I didn't have any of that. In fact, other than the occasional hot flashes and maybe some mood swings, it did not affect me.
That's not bad.
So I was lucky in that way. But then, you know, having my strokes a couple of years ago, it's like I have noticed some changes. Like I have more depressive episodes, which I never used to have. I was basically chronically, if you want to call it that, in a hypermanic state. I wasn't in full blown mania,
Mhm.
but I was always I. To put it simplistically, I could stay up for hours and not sleep, and it would not affect me. Now I'm lucky if I could stay awake 2 hours. So it has, but one of the things that caught me and why I knew I needed to take a break because my brain was just because I was thinking about this stuff like with the abortion laws and seeing our friends' postings and other people's postings along a similar line. It's like I was getting overwhelmed because I felt like there was nothing I could do. And it's like you said, it's what makes us human. And but I look at some people that I know are on the far right that I track, and they're like, "Oh, I don't know what the fuck you guys are complaining about," bullshit like that. It's like I'm like thinking, "Are you that obtuse?" Yes, I'm borrowing a phrase from my favorite movie, Shawshank Redemption.
I love it. I recognize it right away. Right away.
I mean, how I just cannot rectify how someone could be that obtuse to the suffering of another human being. Their justification, well, not all of them, but some of their justification is religiously based that it's your punishment for sin. We'll ignore that for a second. But just based on, empathy. I mean, they have
Lack of it. So
lack of
you've been raised in such a cushy lifestyle that you haven't even had. And I literally in my job, I teach warehouse distribution and call center work for a living. I have to teach people how to be empathetic, and that whole concept of the first time somebody throws a rock at you and you don't like how that feels. So you never want anyone else to feel that way. You've now experienced simple empathy. Like that analogy blows some of their minds even in these classes, and I'm working with 40, 50-year-old adults sometimes. It's just you've been raised in such a cushy life that that was never even remotely a possibility that someone might hurt you
yeah.
because everything's been wrapped up for you in bubble wrap your whole life.
I mean, I would be really an asshole if I said that I haven't lived a privileged life because even though like I struggle financially now, That's beside the point, because what a lot of people don't know is that I actually do come from money. I did have a very privileged life. I had a $500,000 portfolio by the time I was 20 years old. I planned on retiring at 30, but then 1988 hit and everything changed. Um,
Oh, the year before I was born.
yeah, I mean, yeah, that's even scarier, because some of the people I tell this, try to talk about the whole aspect of privilege, weren't even born when I lost all my money.
Well, I know of I know of like the '80s recession. I absolutely know of it. Yeah.
Yeah, what it was. I mean, so I mean, I did not want for anything as
Mhm.
a child. If I want to be honest,
Mhm.
yes, I had issues with my folks, and it did carry over into adulthood, into my 40s. Um, Luckily, although sadly, with the passing of my mom, my dad and I have become closer, especially since my strokes, because I will be honest, without my dad, I would not be here. Well, from a financial standpoint,
Mhm.
has bailed my ass out more times than ever. That is fucking privilege, okay? I'm very well aware of it. And I do struggle financially, but some of it is by choice, because, I the job I have, I pretty much make, for lack of better, my own schedule. Just 6 days a week.
Always nice.
I don't, other than Fridays and Saturdays, I don't work more than 4 hours a night.
Mhm.
When things are going properly and I'm not breaking my ankle, work for a month, fucking things up, in other words, you know, living paycheck to paycheck worked. But since I broke my ankle last year, was it 2 years ago now? I can't even remember. Things have got really foobarred. But I still have privilege because I am white. Uh,
Absolutely.
you know, uh, I won't say just because I am white, but because I am white, people don't look at me suspiciously.
It does definitely give you an edge. It doesn't mean you haven't had hard times of your own, absolutely not. And I also have that privilege as well. So it doesn't negate hard times I've had,
But
but
yeah,
I will never ever be able to understand that particular lack of edge because yes, absolutely
but
white.
and that kills me, because these are, these people that seem to demonstrate a lack of empathy. It just blows my mind. Never once did my parents teach, for lack of a better word, otherwise. You
Mhm.
treat people how you want to be treated. You, I mean, they kind of had a hands off perspective. It doesn't affect me. I'm not worried about it. Okay, yeah. But then it's like, no, when I see people posting that they're fucking terrified to leave their house because they look different, for
Mhm.
it just blows my mind. And that's what really got me going 2 weeks ago. It's just like, I got to the point where my brain just was like, blew up. And so I started like kind of picking at for what we're talking about tonight. And I was going through some of the stuff in this, going back to Hobby Lobby. Is
Mhm.
For those that don't know, I followed the Hobby Lobby case pretty much extensively, even on my blog. I did quite a few blog postings about it. And one thing, when I was putting my attempted outline together for tonight, was that I came across an old post that I had entitled back then, for those of you who say apathetically that this, basically it doesn't apply to you. This is what I wrote in 2014, and thinking now, looking back, it's like it's 2000 fucking 19, and we're seeing it. And this is something that not just myself, but other writers and other pundits and other commentaries have broached the same topic even back then. This As far as I know, none of these laws that we're talking about, whether Alabama, Georgia, Missouri, they have not been implemented as of yet. They're signed into law, but they haven't gone into effect. Now, I'm not 100% about have gone into effect because I know they're all facing legal challenges. Um, with the goal eventually being Supreme Court, as I said, to flip Roe v. Wade. But to be all inclusive, to look past the abortion issue, what I was seeing and what kind of sank me even deeper in my depression, the picture is kind of bleak. You know, as we've been saying, this is not just about abortion. It's pretty much any hot button issue you can think of right now. And it was something I noted back then, concerning what the overall ramifications of the Hobby Lobby decision was. And this is what I wrote. When one looks at the decision rendered by SCOTUS, and this is referring to the Hobby Lobby case, it has to be through the lens of the Reich's overall agenda, starting with a reformed interpretation of the Free Exercise Clause or an outright repeal of the First Amendment, continuing with the abolition of Civil Rights Act of 1964 and ending with the implementation of dominionist ideology in order to govern by theocratic control. With the ruling in Hobby Lobby, the Reich will now be able to exempt themselves from any laws that they don't like
Mm-hmm.
and they find religiously objectable. Further along, I wrote, at a time when women make up more than half of the workforce, the ruling also further denies women equal rights in the workplace. You could insert trans, right? Trans, whatever. Um, by setting women's reproductive health care apart from all other forms of health care. The Roberts Court has legally enshrined a new kind of gender based inequality where
Mm-hmm.
only women are specifically, or trans, are specifically subject to interference from their employer when it comes to personal medical choices.
Yep.
We hope that the president will explore ways to ensure that women, put, put any other marginalized group, who will otherwise be denied reproductive, insert any other hot button issue, healthcare by their employer are not left without coverage. Um, and what I wrote back then and what I find funny is that I came across another article from the Guttmacher org. They're big on the anti-abortion issue, and we reference them quite a big bit when we talk to Kathy. Is that whole bit that I wrote? I mean, what we're seeing is the fruition of the Reich's agenda that they've laid out. This is not some haphazard plan that you guys heard me speak about numerous times. This is an agenda that they have.
Mm-hmm.
The whole thing for dominionist control and theocracy, yada yada yada. I mean, this is something they started actually back. Well, Roe v. Wade would be the more modern incantation of it, but this is, you see it in Francis Schaeffer with Communist Manifesto. No, Christian Manifesto, wrong book. But yeah, I mean, if you were to, Frederick Clarkson has written extensively for PRI concerning dominionist ideology and the control. Also, Talk to Action's another good website if you want to explore it. We saw a big, huge impetus when Sarah Palin was running for vice president. That's when shit really hit the fan. But Guttmacher puts the influential organizations behind this anti-contraception agenda have compartmentalized the debate, which allows them to pick and choose when contraception should be viewed as abortion. This is kind of combining the two, and when it should not. They are
Mm-hmm.
essentially able to pursue a personhood argument in areas where doing so is politically feasible, but at the same time feign moderation by keeping the full-fledged politically toxic personhood agenda at arm's length. This deception is part of a deliberate long-term strategy to limit women's insert access not only to safe and legal abortion, but to common methods of contraception as well. I mean, it's mind blowing to see that something that I wrote back in 2014 is one still going on and two gaining strength. Wait, what say you, Sammy?
Oh, you're very, very intuitive that way, my dear. That's why I appreciate having you around.
Well, what I find funny, well, not funny, haha, but odd is that a lot of people that were writing about the whole influence of dominionist theology and ideology and whatnot, they were saying the same thing. They were saying
Hmm.
that this is a well thought out plan. Blah 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 blah. They would point to things that were going on, and people were like, nah, yeah, we're seeing it now,
Hmm.
and it's just really hard because it's like, what? I mean, where do you go? What do you do? I mean, it's not going to affect me personally, obviously, but what about our friends that are of childbearing age, or in your case with being transgendered? I mean, it does affect you.
Hmm. Well, in the end, still can't give up.
Yeah, yeah. I think but I can see because, like, I know I won't say I was really burned out, but it was just like, seriously, it was just like it's overwhelming.
It can, and that's the other thing to remember too, boys and girls. And I learned this a long time ago. In fact, I believe Callie Wright taught me this one. Is that there's always going to be evil to fight, no matter what, but you can't suddenly decide that you're Superman and take on all of the evil. There's other superheroes out there too, fighting those other evils as well. So, whichever evil you've picked to try to take down, to try to debug, to try to help other people get free from, that's your noble cause. And it doesn't make it any less noble that you're not also helping seal poaching in some island or human trafficking in Burma or some other shit. You're doing your best. All right. Like we all are only human. So there's other heroes out there. That's that human spirit, that humanism that we can't forget. There is that we're not alone. We're absolutely not alone.
Well, I think to try to sort of kind of bring it to a end point is,
Right.
well, no, it's just because I can start rambling and then, like, get totally off out there. But there was a piece written by our own Tristan Mamone that I think for me kind of sums up the whole, I'll say, feeling I have. And she entitled it, or they entitled it, Trump Hates Trans People. And even though we've been talking about abortion, as I said, this crosses over. The first line they put is, everything sucks right now. America is one big dumpster fire, and there's nothing anyone can do about it. Don't believe me? Look at the past week. And what they do is they go through the recent Trump HUD
Mhm.
proposal about women's shelters can turn away trans women if they want to. Um, then another one proposal that would roll back protections for trans people under the ACA, and yeah, they talk about that. And it's like, yeah, that kind of comes up, and there's not. It's a dumpster fire.
Mhm.
I just thought that first line that they wrote, "Everything sucks right now. America is one big dumpster fire, and there's nothing you can do about it." I won't say there's nothing to do about it. I think the only thing we can do is just keep protesting and keep, you know, I know.
We didn't come this far to give up.
Right, exactly, and I think that's what kind of got me through, like, the last 2 weeks, because am I safe? Yes, I'm not suicidal or anything like that. I'm just like, oh, fuck it. I'm just gonna go up in the hills, make my own little shack, hole in the wall,
I know, right?
and hope nobody finds me. Yeah,
Mm,
I'd last a day. Um, yeah, I wouldn't even get up the hill. I probably would get about 5 feet up into the tree line, and that'd be it. Um, yeah, I'm a little bit out of
mm,
shape, but yeah, it's just I know there are numerous, not just in our community, in the atheist community, or in the LGBT community, but overall,
mm.
there are at least statistics that I have seen that about, give or take, 60% of the population that is totally against everything that's going on. And basically, we're being drowned out by a minority. And someone put it as right now it's minority rule. And we just got to keep pounding and pounding. But I haven't figured out a good way to pound because, like, I am a fact based person. I pretty much everything I decide is based within science to some degree, or in the case of social issues, social sociology, and how the soft sciences, as some call it. But like one of the woo nuts I'm dealing with, I'll post scientific fact upon scientific fact upon scientific fact, hundreds and hundreds of studies, reviews, etc. I mean, and they still hold to, yes, I'm talking about Jillian. Uh,
Really?
the salt won't kill you. I mean, it's like there is not one bit of science that supports her claims. None. But yet, it totally ignores it. So, and that's kind of like with talking, especially trans issues recently, and the whole abortion debate, is that no amount of scientific fact is going to sway these people, and I can't figure out what to do because I don't have any other. My brain doesn't work that way, so I
Uh,
just want to see what others are doing in our community to see how I can help.
New solutions to follow next week. I think I might bid everybody adieu with that thought there.
Yes, I think we are going to cut it a little early, short. So, can we find you anywhere yet, Sam?
Just on Facebook for the moment. I'm working on some ambitious things. I just don't want to get too ahead of myself, and I don't want to put too much on my plate that I can't handle. So,
And for those of you that are interested in following Morgan, the best way to find her, and the only way that I can remember at this moment, is Twitter, Mostring. Um, and she's also on Facebook. And easiest way to find me is doing 9998 on Twitter. That connects to my blog. I have a Concast, and I'm also on MeWe. I've been experimenting with that because I've heard it's a dumpster fire over there. But so far, I have one follower, which would be our own. Uh, 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 yeah, okay, name just went out the window. They follow us both on Facebook, and they follow me on the Trailer Park. So yeah, but that's okay. It's more of an experiment, anyways. But and then you can find me on Facebook under Beth A. Hambridge. So
absolutely.
we do have plans for next week. I just don't know what they are yet. And we are probably going to be broaching the Raelians. They've been in the news again. They're alien cult group. Probably in, we'll say, about 3 weeks. So, and I'm still trying to get some guests, but we're getting into that time of year that it's kind of difficult. And I'm also going into the busy part,
Mm-hmm.
graduations and graduation parties and catering and all that fun stuff. So it might be a little hit or miss, but we are still going to continue. It's just got to get things back on track as far as for me personally, and get our schedules all synced up again, and yada yada yada.
Yep.
Thank you all for listening,
Love you all.
And we will see you next week talking about what I have no clue at the moment. So, with that, I have to find my button so I can turn this off. With that, I will bid you all adieu and have a good night, safe week, and I hope your holiday went well and all that fun stuff. Peace, y'all.